Hello, I'm Alex Jones. Myself, my family, the info. Bob Fletcher Investigations.com is his website. Our websites are Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.tv. I want to continue with weather weapons. Then I want to get Bob Fletcher's take on the end game, where all this is going, what makes these criminal groups tick. But I knew this was coming. CNN weatherman blames tornadoes on climate change. We'll try to play a clip of this later if we have time. If not, we're linking to it up at Infowars.com. And sure enough, whenever there's any earthquake or weather problem, Al Gore says, just pay me carbon money and I'll fix it. And I've always pointed out, because Bill Gates is pushing this too, they can launch the crazy weather and then say, pay us a global tax. In fact, they're now saying, pay for a global weather control bureau and we'll stop the tornadoes or hurricanes from hitting you. In fact, that's what Bill Gates is heavily invested in. We showed like a Reuters article earlier on that. So all of this is going on. Bob, I want you to continue how you started looking into this and discovering it and how advanced it is. But clearly now this is like the mafia saying, I'll burn down your grocery store if you don't pay me protection money. I mean, we know they've got this. The shadow government, no wonder they're so arrogant.
I would say it's unbelievable as far as that's concerned. I mean, at this point in time, they've been so successful also, which includes things like, the assassinating Kennedy in front of everybody and all of that and getting away with it, taking down the biggest buildings in New York City and getting away with it, telling us it was a handful of these characters that a couple of afternoons planned how to do this major, gigantic covert operations. But anyhow, so we'll get back to the weather situation. I have a couple people telling me, hey, this is real, and this is approximately 1994. So I was doing some other investigations for someone, and I don't remember who it was at this particular time, actually in the Congress. So what I did was I contacted the United Nations directly, just right with the telephone, just called them, and I told them who I was, and said I wanted to speak to somebody about getting a copy of a treaty that had taken place several years earlier. And they said, oh, okay, and they switched me over to the legal department in the United Nations. And I was, because of doing work at that time for a congressional office, I said, I'm doing a report for the Congress, and I need to have a copy of what is called the Treaty on Weather Modification that was supposedly done sometime around 1976, 77. And the lady was very polite, and she said, hold on a minute. And she came back, and she says, I don't have anything on that. I don't seem to have that. And I said, well, you know what? I bet you that it's not for general public use. You may have to try the other computer program relative to the stuff that we don't usually put out for general public. Right? Now, when I said that, I had no idea what I was talking about in reality. I was shooting a dart in the air. I didn't even know, but I assumed that they probably had the double sets of books, so to speak. So she says, well, okay, hold on. And she says, listen, she got back. She says, this is going to take me a day or so. Can I get back to you? And I said, sure. I gave her my phone number, and I just said, sure, call me back. So son of a gun, the next day, I think it was, following day, this very nice lady called back, and she said, Mr. Fletcher, yeah, you were right. It's not for general public distribution, but I do have it, and I found it, and I can send you the whole thing. And I said, well, that's just great. And she says, do you need legal certification? And I said, sure, you got to send certification. And also, technically, I didn't know really what she was talking about. But I said, certainly send that. And she says, do you need it in both French and English? And I said, yes, if you don't mind. And I was laughing to myself because I'm thinking, this is amazing. Whatever. 10 years ago, I was a toy manufacturer, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay, so she sent the whole thing to me. and in a big, nice package, didn't take but a couple of days, and son of a gun, here it was right in my hands, and it's the United Nations Treaty to prevent the use, an agreement between the major nations of the world to guarantee that they will not use the weather modification as a weapon of war against each other. This is a treaty like we would do for nuclear weapons. This was done in 1976 and finalized in 77.
Absolutely. Stay there. We're going to be right back. We've got the treaty up on screen for Prisonplanet.tv viewers.
We're on the march. The empires.
I want to get a big picture look with Bob Fletcher, because he's a smart guy, on studying the New World Order for decades now. I mean, we know it's about eugenics. It's about domination and power. But really, from my research, it's a bunch of wicked control freaks trying to outdo each other. And so it's a synthesis of pure evil, because only the most evil will end up in power, because they're always stabbing each other in the back. And that's why it's so wild and so ruthless and so crazy. Like, why are they letting DU be used? Why are they letting reactors melt down everywhere or leak? Why are they GMOing to reduce the population? I want to get back into weather weapons and what you discovered, but let's get into that question now. Is there a method to the madness? I mean, I know they're good at controlling us, but more and more I realize the elite themselves are psychos who are out of control and who are probably going to end up destroying us, Bob.
There's no question about it. And you know, part of some of my earlier discoveries was the old Iron Mountain report, which I'm sure you've done.
Yes.
Reports on, and for the people that don't understand what that was, it was a report actually put together in the early 60s under John F. Kennedy originally, and then passed on to Johnson, of course, after he took his step up to the presidency. But the Iron Mountain report, which there was always a big argument whether that was real or not real and all that, but there was specifically, they laid out the steps that were necessary to be taken in the United States of America at the government level as we moved into a one-world government where we no longer were targeting Russia and Red China and et cetera, and vice versa. When we reached that point in La La Land, when the whole world was one big government, what was going to be the financial steps taken, the psychological steps, the emotional steps, what has to be done to control America? And this was the important point, was as they moved out of a constitutional government into world government, because the idea was, obviously, you can't have a constitution that gives the people the rights to do what we have been doing for 200 years in the United States of America when we move into a non-aggressive mode. We have no enemies. So in the report, it says we have to come up with synthetic enemies that are equal to the dynamics of that they are artificial enemies that might kill us, the same as Russia or Red China might with atomic weapons, for example. So they write in the report, they put in there, you know what, we can use terrorists, unknown, unspecified, mystical terrorists that would cause us constant threat, because they said to themselves that if we're taking all this money out of the pockets of the taxpayers right now on the basis of weapons that we have to protect ourselves from Russia and the Red Chinese, and if we no longer have them as enemies, we still want to be able to take the same amount of money out of their pockets. So we have to convert into a new enemy. They talked about unknown terrorism, and they talked about maybe UFOs, maybe utilizing the concept of aliens threatening the future of the world, and everybody would come together under one big umbrella, and we can slowly eliminate the Constitution. That's literally written out in the Iron Mountain Report.
And by the way, that came out in the 1960s. That got leaked, and it's all come true. The Rand Corporation, I've interviewed Alex Abaya, who wrote a best-selling book about World War II, and so the Rand Corporation liked it and thought that they'd analyzed him and brought him in, and he's one of the only people to ever be given access to their annals. And he's come on the show, and he said it was all true. The end of the family, world government, phasing out all liberty, I mean, just a nightmare future. That is literally what they're establishing.
It is. It was written and created in the 60s. It was a 30-year plan originally, basically, which we pretty much absorbed that at this point in time. Up through that, would have put it into the 90s. They thought it would take that long to accomplish what they had to do. They laid out steps 1 through 9, by the way, which included world currency, which, of course, they're moving towards, the power being transferred to the United Nations or some other such organization on weapons and things of that sort to move it out of the immediate control of individual nations, which includes us. And
look at Obama's telling Congress, you're no longer over war, and Congress sits there and takes it. And the generals tell him, you're not the boss anymore.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I had this fantastic story that happened. I was contacted because I was out at this time in the 90s all over the United States doing speaking engagements, presentations before I became injured. And I was NBC or ABC contacted me, and they said, Mr. Fletcher, you're talking about this thing called the Iron Mountain Report. And I said, yes. And he said, would you come on, and I think it was 60 Minutes, it was one of the major programs, would you debate the fella that is still alive, the old gentleman that actually originally wrote that book that exposed, the expose of this?
Leonard Lewin.
Leonard Lewin. And he says, because Leonard Lewin is telling us that he just made that all up, that it was all just a novel that he actually put together. And I asked this guy, I said, as a matter of fact, the producer I was talking to, his name was Rick Nelson. Anyhow, sidebar. So he says, I said to him, I said, have you read that? Have you read The Iron Mountain? And he said, no, I haven't, which didn't surprise me. I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what. First off, absolutely, I will go on and debate him face-to-face on your program. And I said, I'm ready to do it next week. You just let me know. I said, but he's not going to do that. He's not going to sit face-to-face with me with the information that I've got on this. And he says, oh, yes, he's already said he would do it. I said, okay, good. I said, but you need to also go over that Iron Mountain Report. Well, he called me back in about 4 days, and he said, Ms. Fletcher, the network has decided they didn't want to do this. And I said, oh, well, how about that? I said, did you read that report? And he says, yes. I said, did you show it to your superiors? What's actually in that book? And he said, yes. And I said, well, that's why they're saying they don't want to do it. So the bottom line was that I told him, I said, look, if this guy wrote this as a novel, then one of two things has taken place. The United States covert government looked at it and decided it was so great that they would model the entire future of the United States and the destruction of our constitutional government on the basis of this guy's novel. That's one thing. Otherwise, this guy is the greatest psychic that ever lived, because every single thing that he put into this report is taken place, has either taken place already, or they only have 4 more steps, and they're going to be destroying the constitutional government on the basis of this guy's novel. But anyhow, the upshot was all of a sudden they changed from